Welcome to Central Texas, where summer days exceed 100 degrees, and heat stress is one of the greatest threats to cow health, reproduction, and performance. But since adding monitoring technology to their 1,250 cow herd last year, dairyman Hidde Osinga from Overwhere Dairy is using color-collected data to find and treat compromised cows sooner, catch silent heats, and has captured a 15 percentage point increase in conception rate. Find out how his team has learned to trust the system and hear about Hidde's excitement for the future of dairying on this Up-Level Dairy podcast. This is the podcast for dairy farm owners, managers, and advisors who are committed to profitability, sustainability, and excellence. I'm your host, Peggy Coffeen, and it's my mission to bring you the conversations that will up-level your skill set and your mindset so you can be a top performer in the dairy farming business. This episode is part of our High Performance Mindset series powered by Nedap. Nedap is future-proofing dairy farms by revolutionizing cowside care through technologies in activity monitoring, cow locating, milk metering, and identification. Check out previous episodes in the High Performance Mindset series in the show notes. And enjoy this conversation with Hidde Osinga from Overwhere Dairy in Proctor, Texas.
So we're milking about 1,250 cows right now, which is max capacity for us because we milk on a double 16 3 times a day, but it's going pretty well.
You know, when you step back and take a look at how far you've come, you grew up on the dairy, but now you are in a level that's a little bit higher in your responsibility and your management. And so when you really think about the biggest challenges that you've faced as a young dairy manager, what have you been running into? What are some of the roadblocks that have come up in your way or challenges that you have faced in your dairy management role?
I wouldn't say there was much challenges. Like getting everybody on board was a start, but I mean, once we got them going, it was pretty well, and everybody adapted pretty quickly. And really, that's about it. It was just getting adapted to everything and getting everybody on board and with it. You know, when we talked about stuff like implementing the collars, our other herdsman, he looked at us like, "Oh, you sure you know what we're doing?" You know, he still had a flip phone, so getting him on board was a start, but he does pretty well. He's got a smartphone now and he's got it figured out. So that was probably a big start, was getting everybody on board and up to speed with technology and stuff like that.
So I want you to back up a little bit to when you decided that looking into some collars and some technology was something you wanted to do for the dairy. Where were you at? Like, what kind of challenges were you bumping into at that time? Or maybe it's the other side. What kind of opportunities did you see that you knew you could capitalize on with a little bit more information on your herd?
Yeah, we heard about the collars. We're looking into it, and we kind of got intrigued with catching sick cows earlier and tracking your cows' heat cycles better and breeding them, you know, at the right times and stuff like that, which is something we talked about. And it's funny because we saw something about the collars, and me and my dad were in the office talking about it. I think our office is tapped or something because we were talking about the collar system stuff, and not a week later, we had a salesman show up talking about the boluses that the cows can do to track like their stuff and their temperatures. And then a week later, Gen X showed up talking about the collars.
You know, at that time, where were you guys at with what you were using for technology? Like, what was the system and the setup like at the dairy as far as how you're already using some data or collecting some of that information? Where did you start with?
We've used some technology here for a while. My dad started with FeedWatch back in 2002 or 1, I believe. So my dad's been on the technology ball for a while, especially with the feed. We have FeedWatch and Dairy Comp. So we use Dairy Comp a lot. And then that's why when we were talking about the collars, when Gen X approached us, they said it corresponds with Dairy Comp. So that was a big plus for us whenever they mentioned that. And the transition with it was really smooth.
So we're already using Dairy Comp for the record keeping side, and you had implemented FeedWatch on the feed side, and you saw that there might be some other ways that bringing in some more data for decision making could help to catch sick cows earlier and help with the breeding as well, correct?
It definitely helped with like the collars. Every morning I'll pull up my list and it'll give me a list of cows I need to go check. And I've had it a lot where I catch a cow early and I'll treat her with some medicine, just some light medication, some aspirin and stuff. and she'll bounce back no problem. Whereas if we wouldn't have seen that till 3 days later, it could have turned into like pneumonia or something like that, and by then it might be a little too far to be treatable, and then you
Mhm.
lose the cow or have to sell her, or she dies, and then you don't can't even sell her. So it is definitely we've definitely noticed a drastic change with that.
Were there some specific challenges that you saw? Was there some elevated levels of some disease or opportunities you saw to increase pregnancy? Like, were there some specific things that you're like, okay, if we can implement this technology, we can solve this problem or we can move this needle on a certain benchmark? Where did you see the greatest opportunities of where you were at that was stressing you out or causing downfalls or delays just in inefficiencies in your system, where you could really gain those growth points and gain points?
Yeah, definitely like with the preg rate and stuff like that, and tracking heats, especially living in Texas with them hot summers, being able to have the callers to help us really see it as definitely what a lot of our focus was, and really just finding the sick cows and catching them early. Because I mean, when it's 102 degrees, if you don't catch a cow quick, it goes fast. So the collars were definitely something that we wanted to look into, and they definitely work.
So the environment of where you're at and where your dairy is really something, as you said, you have to catch things fast. There's not a lot of room for forgiveness.
I'm ready to see how this summer goes. We implemented the collars middle of summer last year, so now we can see how a full summer goes with them. But I mean, once we put them in right away, we noticed it was a big difference on seeing stuff. They brought us, I think, 1,000 collars first, so we put all them on, and we were still short like 500. So once they got in and we got them on, I think it was the middle of September, October when we fully got the system going and stuff like that. So I'm really curious to see how the summer will go.
When you first put the collars on, tell me who got collars and do they stay on for the lifetime? Do you take them off or swap them out? Like, what's your system and setup like for when and who gets collars and when they come off?
So we did our milking cows first just because we knew we were limited on the collars. So we put all the milking cows first that we could. And we buy springers too every now and then. So I'll wait till they come fresh and we put them in the system and stuff like that. And then I'll put a collar on them. But every time we sell a cow or stuff like that, the collars come off. And once you sell them out of the system, the collar resets. So it can be used for another cow, which is pretty nice. That was a big plus for us because the boluses, their advantage is they do track temperatures and stuff accurately. But the thing is, once you put a bolus in the cow, you can't remove it. Once you sell the cow, the bolus is gone. So that's a pretty costly deal having to buy boluses every time you buy and stuff like that and sell. So the collars, they got a 7-year battery life. I think we have 5 years with these collars, and then after 5 years, we'll see what they want to do from there. And I'm sure by then there'll be more upgrades to do and stuff from there.
So it kind of sounds like when you knew you wanted to bring in something, you were going back and forth between boluses and collars. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, we definitely, when that guy brought the bolus over, we definitely were intrigued with him, and we knew some dairymen that had it. But then, like I said, I told my dad after Gen X came by, we've always had a really good relationship with Gen X. I told him, I said, one, it works with dairy comp, so you don't have to get no new systems. And two was you have to look at your service, like beyond the callers, like is your service, like who's going to be there when you need help with stuff. And the Gen X, they answer the phone 24/7. If I have any questions, I'll text Arturo and he'll get back with me right away.
Going back to that decision making piece, so you were looking at kind of the longevity of the product for one, but also the service available, and you had this established relationship and you knew that they would be able to follow through and follow up on any questions that you might have. So you implemented your collaring system last summer, you mentioned, right? Late last summer. And you said, Hidde, that you saw some things right away. And so what were the first things that you started to notice after you put collars on your cows?
Catching them earlier, sick cows, and treating them, and tracking a lot of silent heats, like heats that you wouldn't visibly see because we chalk all of our cows. Even with that, with chalking, it was catching a lot more heats. Like, system would say this cow was in heat, and you go look at her and she doesn't look like it, but when then you breed her and she was definitely ready to breed.
So those are the things that really stuck out that were super tangible and measurable right off the bat, were just you could see that a cow that normally wouldn't have showed up in the past, that you maybe wouldn't have prioritized for breeding, actually was ready to breed. And so you're dealing with some pretty extreme heat stress in Texas, especially in the summer. And so do you find that what you would have observed of a cow that would have been showing her signs differently, you were able to just still monitor and find those cows that were ready for breeding that you wouldn't have in the past?
That's why I'm really excited for this summer, just to see how it's going to go. Yeah, like right now we're doing pre-check from the summer, so we call that the summertime blues. I'm really curious to see this time next year, after the summer with the collars and how we breed on the collars, and see how much more of an improvement we've done. We can already see ourselves without the reports, what our results are and how much more of an increase is done for us.
So you talked a little bit about catching some sick cows too. So any good examples or stories where you kind of caught those first couple of cows prior to when you would have just given visual observation and really stood out in your mind that this was the real deal, that this was something that could really be a game changer?
I'll have a cow show up on the list, and I'll go visibly look at her and say, "She don't look too bad," and then check her temperature, and she's got a high temperature, so she was catching a fever. And I'll treat her like I said, just with an aspirin and just some medicine, and she'll bounce back and no problem. Whereas if we wouldn't have seen that 2 3 days later, then it would have progressed into worse, and it possibly untreatable. And then you got to sell or lose the cow.
What about on the cow health side? Are there any metrics that you've been able to look at and see some results and reduction in treatments or reduction in some of those health events that would have gone into dairy comp in the past?
Yeah, like our cull rate and stuff. Like we're treating a lot more cows, so instead of getting sick and going beyond the treating, having to sell, so we've definitely noticed a drastic change on that as well.
So there's been a change there, but then when you talk to your team and when you see your employees that typically would have been handling some of those incidences, and sick cows a lot more work, right? It's more intervention, it's more hands-on, it's more lockup time, it's everything. And so what's been the response from your team now that you have a tool and some tech in hand?
I'm shocked. Like it's been really well. Like obviously we're having to treat a couple more cows and stuff, but they've jumped on it and have done really well keeping up with it and stuff too. I was worried that they were going to think, oh, it's going to be more work and stuff like that, but they realize if you catch them early and treat them and they get better, then that's honestly a lot less work than having to wait till they get sicker and having to treat them more and spend more time with them. As to now, see, most of the time, like I said, I'll go check them in the morning, and if I notice they're a little off, I'll treat them myself, and I'll watch them for 2 3 days and treat them again the next day. And like I said, most of the time, if they bounce back, then it's done. Or if they still need a little more, then I'll put them in the sick pen and we'll treat them further from there.
Yeah.
So I guess for them, it really hasn't been that much extra on them. Besides, if we do catch more, then they'll have to take care of them. But they've done great.
You've talked a lot about the awesome things that have come from implementing some technology into your herd, into your management, into the day-to-day at the dairy. What roadblocks have you ran into? What have been some of the challenges along the way?
Honestly, the biggest roadblock, which is not really that big, but is we've had some collars fall off, like, because the way the strap's set up, it's just a buckle, like it goes through and then back through it. If you don't put them on tight enough, they'll back off enough to where it'll come off the cow's head. That was a struggle in the beginning, but like we had a barn that the loops were pretty old in, so we just replaced all them, and that was probably our biggest what caused them to fall, because the cow would lay down, and rub their neck on the loop, and the loop would catch the collar and rip it off. So that's probably was our biggest challenge. But now that we're getting the hang of it now, and I told the hands that if they ever help me, like, you got to put it on really tight. Otherwise, if you don't cinch it down good, it'll back off slowly.
And I know you mentioned earlier as well that another challenge was just getting everyone on the team up to speed with technology. You had some people that were still using a flip phone, for example, right? And just getting them up to speed with what technology was going to look like in their new day-to-day. So walk me through how you got your team up to speed and what that took.
Yeah, it's definitely changed a bunch. Like I said, they don't even our herdsman. He doesn't really mess with like checking the cows, like the stats in the morning. I'll do that all myself. So Breeder does his thing with the breeding side of it, but when it comes to like checking the health reports and stuff, I do all that. So he
Yeah.
doesn't really mess with it too much. But he'll still see a cow that doesn't look good, and he'll ask me to go check her because it updates very regularly. So every now and then we'll catch one before we see it on the system. So he'll say, "Hey, this cow don't look good," and I'll pull it up and say, "Yeah, she is on the list. Just got on there today." So it works good.
So it sounds like you and the team have pretty much fully adapted to this new way of dairy management. But I'm curious, when you look back on implementing and trying something new, what did it take for you and your dad also and your team to truly trust in the system? Because this was moving from being reliant on cow sense, which it sounds like you and your dad and some of your crew have a pretty strong cow sense. So this is moving away from what you had always known and stepping into entirely new territory of relying on data instead of what you could see and feel and sense on your own. What was that transition like of learning how to trust in the data in the system?
A lot of it was definitely service, like Gen X approaching us, and we have a lot of trust in them because I don't think they had any dairymen around this area to say, "Hey, we want you guys to try the system." They started us off on a trial, so that kind of helped us wanting to try it. But just their service and knowing that they would be there for any questions along the way, and they helped us put the collars on all the cows, and that was what helped us move forward with it as well. And I know my dad was ready to try it because his buddies and stuff they were already doing it. So and they were telling him how much they liked it. So it wasn't a really hard decision.
And now just elaborate a little bit on the integration of data. So prior to bringing in the collars, you had mentioned that you were using Dairy Comp, you were using the FeedWatch system. Well, now you're pulling in a whole new stream of data from the monitoring from the Nedap collars. And so now you've got what? Rumination, you've got activity. Any other data points that you pull in?
It's rumination, eating, and activity.
So rumination, eating, and activity. Now you have all of that data. And so what's it been like to try to put all of these pieces of the puzzle together so you have truly actionable data when you look at everything from the individual cow to the feeding, all the way through the chain, through the cow records and everything else?
It's been pretty neat to see all that. Just knowing that a little box can track all that and keep up with it. It's definitely been impressive to see how something like that could track all that.
Did you have to do anything special to be able to integrate the data, or did everything kind of sync with each other when you first put the collars on?
So I mean, we had to install antennas and some Wi-Fi boosters. So that was really the only thing we had to do extra. Like I said, Nedap responds with dairy comp. So that was our biggest. Okay, let's do it because we didn't have to have a whole new system or nothing like that. So that's it. Really, the transition was pretty simple.
So everything went really well from start to implementation, and now having that information at your hands, able to make some different decisions and excited for continuous improvement in the results that it's driving for your dairy. And any other results that you can speak to? What else have you seen or noticed in the last 9 months since you put those first collars on?
It'll show up a cow not feeling well, and you'll look at her and she doesn't look too bad, but then you notice she'll have mastitis. So it's definitely helped us catch a lot more mastitis cows as well. So that's been a big plus as well.
So when you're catching mastitis with the collar, you're just noticing a deviation in what activity, rumination. What do you see?
That's the way the collar works. Like it makes a baseline for the cow. Anytime that baseline moves in a different direction, it'll notify me. They say when it does that, something's up with the cow, and it'll be one of them things. I always check for that, and usually it ends up being something like that. Or every now and then it'll tell me, and there'll be nothing wrong with her. But I'll check, and we'll have just moved her to a different pen or something like that. So it's just a new environment for the cow, and that'll throw it off sometimes as well. So I always check those factors first before I even go check the cow. I'm like, okay, we just moved her 2 days ago, so she's just adjusting to the new pen.
So you're able to kind of also put a lens of reality when you look at those changes and see, okay, what's changed in this cow's environment, what's changed in her position in the social hierarchy of the group, and you see that those differences too, right? So with that in mind, anything else that you've changed in your management because of the information you now have at your fingertips?
The herdsman, he still goes off the computer. So for me, I do everything on my phone. So it's definitely come in handy. I'll be, it'll be the end of the day and I'll be driving and I'll see a cow that looks a little different. So I can just look her up right there on the phone and be able to see all of her records and stuff like that. Or my dad will call me and say, hey, check this cow. Because he don't look up the numbers that much either. So hey, look up this cow and see if she's on your list. So that's why everybody
Yeah.
always calls me to check the list. I'm like, hey, you guys know how to log in too, but it don't bother me. I don't mind it at all. So because as long as they're keeping an eye, that's all that matters.
It sounds like this whole thing has worked out really well for you guys. Any other thoughts or things that you'd like to share? Let me just put it this way: what do you think would be helpful for other dairymen to know about? I mean, just technology in general, like and the learning curve, the adaptation curve. Even just getting over the obstacle of the price tag. Like, what do you think other dairymen would want to know?
Well, the price for the system, I think it pays for itself so fast because just having better production. Looking at the price, up front, when you look at it, okay, that's the price for it. But when in the end, it'll pay for itself over and over again. So same with like when my dad switched to Feed Watch, that system has paid for itself over and over again over the last 20, 30 years or something like that. No, 2002, so 22 years. It's definitely paid for itself over and over again. The world we're living in now, technology is a thing, and it's something that we all have to adapt to and get with to maximize our production and to go forward from there.
When you really step back and you look at all of the challenges that you face as a dairyman, I mean, we've got the markets, right? Like you've got special circumstances with just even the weather, as we talked about in Texas and the climate that you're in, the labor market. So you're facing all those challenges. And then at the same time, it's not getting easier to find employees. And then there's also just greater expectations of the consumer and the milk market, the milk procurement companies and co-ops for what they expect of you as well. Lots of pressures, lots of challenges. And I just want to invite you to speak into that for a moment. From the technology side, how is this helping you to look at your long-term future in the dairy business?
Hopefully in the future, it'll definitely help with some labor savings, being as how hard it is to find help and get help, find help at the dairy. So hopefully in the future we'll implement more technology. I don't know if we'll ever go with robots, being how hot it is in Texas. Maybe do a rotary down the road. Who knows? But technology is definitely going to help with labor.
Kind of looking at the future, what do you think it's going to take for you to continue to be able to be a dairyman in Texas 10 years, 15 years from now?
Just adapting to the new technology and going through with it and really implement it on your dairy to try to get the max production out of everything. I think that'll definitely keep you going.
So really just looking to elevate that production and performance and efficiency all the way around.
When you look to implement new technology, at the initial cost of it, you're like, wow, that's a pretty big investment. But seeing what it'll do for you in the long run, saving you money in the long run, it's just worth it. The biggest obstacle a lot of people face is the cost of things. Like, oh, that's a big cost, but for the long run in the future, I think it'll pay for itself and maximize your productivity.
Well, it sounds like it's been a great system and technology to implement into your herd and make your life easier as a manager and also position you in the dairy for the future. So Hidde, one thing I really enjoy doing is not just having this conversation about technology, but also getting to know a little bit more about you and as a dairyman, how you look at the world, how you position yourself to be successful in your role every day. And that brings us to those last 5 questions that I have for you today. I call these the up level 5. They're all about pushing your next level of personal performance and personal success. And so that's really what it's all about. I'm excited to hear your thoughts and get a little bit inside of your mind here. And so Hidde, the first question I have for you is, what does success look like to you?
It's just trying to maximize and do the best you can at everything you do. That's the way I look at it. It's just
Yeah.
trying to do your best, and at the end of the day, you look at, okay, we did a good job, and everything is going great.
So very simple, just doing your best every day, huh? Okay, in 3 words, speaking of doing your best every day, in 3 words, how do you want to show up each day?
I was thinking about that one. I just honestly ready to work. That's the way I look at it. Just ready to work, ready to get going.
Oh, awesome. Okay, question number 3. What words do you live by?
My grandpa was a big family man, so really family is important. Family is everything. Our whole dairy family, we're all so close, and I think that's a really great thing to have, is being really
Yeah.
close with your family.
So family is everything. So question number 4 I have for you is, who are the thought leaders that you follow?
My dad, that's who I follow. I strive to be everything he is. He came to America with hardly anything and built up this what we have today. So I definitely look up to him and definitely want to be at least half of what he is.
Oh,
If I could be half, that's doing something pretty great.
sounds like you have a pretty amazing role model right within your own family. And the last question for you, what is your next personal up level? When you look at the next level of your professional life on the dairy, of your personal life, what are you going after right now?
Definitely to expand in the future. Right now, we're pretty content where we're at, but definitely the future, maybe to expand a little more and upgrade our milk and parlor and stuff like that. That would probably be our next up level. As long as everything stays good with the dairy industry, you never know. That's a roller coaster on its own.
It's not an easy business. It's not for the weak. It's not for the faint of heart. And it's definitely not for anyone without passion and incredible drive and tenacity. And that's what makes it so fun to get to talk with you and other dairy producers on this Up-Level Dairy podcast. Is there's always something to learn and gain and be a little bit inspired by as well. And you've done that today here, Hidde, for me and for our listeners out there, that will get to know a little bit more about not just the technology that you're using, but how that process has gone and the results of it, and a little bit about you and how you're looking at the world and going after what you want, doing it every day, putting in that work, and prioritizing family all along the way too. You just heard from Hidde Osinga from Overwhere Dairy in Proctor, Texas. This episode is part of our High Performance Mindset series powered by Nedap. Nedap is future-proofing dairy farms by revolutionizing cow-side care through technologies and activity monitoring, cow locating, milk metering, and identification. Check out previous episodes in the High Performance Mindset series in the show notes. Thank you for listening to the Up-Level Dairy Podcast. I'm your host, Peggy Coffey.